When you think of a serial killer, who comes to mind? A genius like Hannibal Lecter? A charming predator like Ted Bundy?
My name is Ted Bundy. I've never spoken to anybody about this.
Or someone so obviously disturbed that you would know to stay away? Gao Chengyong was none of them. He was a convenience store worker in Baiyin, a mining city in northwest China. Students bought snacks from him. Neighbors saw him as quiet, harmless, even a little meek. He was a husband, a father of 2 sons. No one feared him. No one watched him. No one looked twice. But from 1988 to 2002, this ordinary man murdered 11 women. The youngest was only 8 years old. Then he vanished. Except he never really vanished. He did not flee China. He did not change his name. He did not disappear into the mountains. He stayed in Baiyin. He bought groceries, went to work, came home, and watched the evening news with his wife. And on that news, police were broadcasting his wanted notice. The whole city was searching for the monster for 28 years. And the monster was sitting on his own sofa, washing. Today, let's get closer to that ordinary face and uncover what was hiding behind it all along. Every serial murder case has a beginning, and very often the first victim is the key. Because before the killer develops his own pattern, he is still just a man testing himself. He may spend days, even weeks, waiting, choosing what he believes is the safest target. But the first time, it's different. He's nervous, he hesitates, he makes mistakes. And those mistakes can reveal what he truly wanted from the start. For Gong Chengmyun, it began with a 23-year-old woman. Everyone in town knew her. She was pretty, she loved dancing, and people called her Little White Shoes because she was often seen wearing a pair of white shoes. On the afternoon of the 26th of May, 1988, her brother was in the next room, just one wall away. Gao entered her room, turned the radio up as loud as it would go, and brutally killed her. Then he walked out through the front door, calm enough to leave the scene as if nothing had happened. A few hours later, her brother came to call her for dinner. That was when he found her dead. That murder changed everything. Years later, during interrogation, Gao confessed something chilling. At first, he said he was only looking for cash, but when she fought back, the robbery turned into something far darker. And in that moment, he discovered something he had never truly felt in his real life: absolute control. Before that day, Gao Chengyong's life had been moving in one direction, downward.
你想一想啊，就在你的成长的过程当中，有没有那女孩子欺负过你？
没有。
你觉得你自信吗？
不自信。
不自信。这种不自信的一直都有吗？
一直都有。
一直到现在呢？你能谈一下就是你这个跟你家人的关系吗？你跟你父亲这个关系怎么样？
不怎么样。
跟父亲关系不怎么样，跟母亲关系还可以。
都不怎么样。
When he was young, he had almost become a pilot. For a young man from a poor background in China, that could have been a rare chance to change his fate. But in the end, it slipped away. His place was taken by someone with better connections. After that, Gao drifted from job to job. He lost money in business, developed a gambling habit, and slowly became a quiet, repressed man with no clear way out. This is not an excuse. Many people experience failure, humiliation, and poverty. They do not become killers. But in Gong Chengmyun, those failures did not become the drive to change his life. They sank deeper. They built up inside him, like explosives buried underground for years. The first murder lit the fuse. Inside someone else's room, a man who had failed to control his own life discovered that he could control others' life. When do serial killers usually strike? You probably already have the image in your mind. Late at night, heavy rain, a dark alley, a woman walking alone, footsteps closing in behind her. Darkness has always felt like the serial killer's natural cover. It hides the face, it buries the footsteps, it makes fear feel bigger than it is. But the Gou Chimyong didn't need a dock. Most of his 11 murders happened in broad daylight, around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, when the sun was at its brightest. Neighbors were moving through the hallways. Children were running downstairs. The whole city was awake. And that was exactly when he walked into one woman's room after another. Why daylight? Part of the answer was practical. In a small Chinese city in the 1990s, men were usually out at work during the day, leaving mostly women and children at home. A man knocking on the door at 2 in the afternoon, claiming he was there to fix the plumbing or check the electric meter, would raise far less suspicion than a stranger showing up in the middle of the night. But what happened in 1998 made that explanation feel incomplete. By then, local police had already confirmed that a serial killer was active. Officers were going door to door. The entire city was on alert. Gao Qingyong knew he was being hunted. And yet that year, he killed 4 people. 2 of those murders happened only 4 days apart. This no longer looked like simple evasion. It looked like escalation. He didn't seem to be just killing. He seemed to be testing whether the city could see him at all. Why would he do that? One morning, in the winter of 1998 may give us the answer. The sky was not fully bright yet. A woman was walking to a public toilet, just as she normally would. When she reached the entrance, she saw a man standing there. He was wearing a mask. In his hand, he was gripping a knife. There was only one step between them. In that moment, she had no time to understand what was happening. She only knew one thing. If he forced her inside, she might never come out again. She used every bit of strength she had to push him away. Then she ran, screaming for help. A neighbor's dog began barking wildly. Then came the sound of doors opening, footsteps, people waking up. The entire alley snapped awake. The man did not chase her. He ran. That woman was Yu Xiulan. She was the only person who ever escaped Gou Chimyong alive.
It was a winter solstice of 1998. At around 6 inches in the morning, I got up and went to the public bathroom. I had just squatted down. Then he came in, he grabbed me, he grabbed my clothes, and he stabbed straight toward me with a knife right at my chest. I grabbed him immediately. I held on to him, face to face. Oh my God, I was terrified. My legs were shaking. I looked straight at him and he said, "Don't panic, don't be afraid." Then I said, "You came here with a knife to take my life. How could I not be afraid?" I was standing there. Then I pushed him back. I pushed him away and ran.
Police brought in the country's top forensic sketch artists. Based on the only survivor's account, they created an image of the killer and posted it across the city. Soon, almost everyone in Bayan had seen that face. But there was one problem. It looked nothing like Gou Chimyong. So imagine this scene. At night, Gao is sitting on the sofa with his wife, watching the news as his own wanted notice appears on television. His wife cursed the monster on the screen, and the real killer is sitting right beside her, silent. Perhaps this was the hidden reward of killing in daylight, because killing in the dark is anonymous. But killing in the daylight is a gamble. And for more than 10 years, he kept placing that same bet. The wager was himself, and every time he won. After 2002, Gou Chimyong suddenly went silent. And that raises a disturbing question. Can a serial killer simply stop? Usually, the answer is no. Once murder becomes a source of pleasure, control, and ritual, it is rarely something a person can just walk away from. Most serial killers stop only when they are caught, when they die, or when something outside their control forces them to stop. But Gou Chimyong did stop. At least, that is how it looked from the outside. The explanation seemed simple. He was getting older. He was no longer as strong as before. And more importantly, his eldest son had gotten into college. Gao did not want his crimes to destroy his child's future. He and his wife moved into the urban district of Bayan and began running a small convenience store inside a school. After that, the murders in the city stopped. It almost sounds as if the father had finally defeated the monster. But if you look at where Gao Chengyang chose to live, another answer begins to appear. He did not leave Baiyin. He stayed less than 200 meters from the place where his 7th victim had been murdered. Every time he stepped outside, he was walking through his own crime map, past the streets where he had once hunted, past the buildings he had once entered as a killer. In criminal geography, there is a concept known as the comfort zone. Many serial killers operate in places they know well because familiar streets, exits, and routines give them a sense of control. But Gao Chengyang's comfort zone became something darker. He was not running, he was relieving. According to the police investigation, Gao had a habit of keeping photos or pieces of clothing that belonged to his victims. Late at night, when everyone else was asleep, he would take them out, stare at them in silence, and then destroy them. That detail changes how we understand his silence. The violence didn't stop. It have continued in another form. It became a private ritual, something he could return to again and again. Before 2002, the thrill came from the hunt itself, following, entering, controlling, watching life disappear in his hands. After 2002, the thrill have come from something quieter, watching the city live inside the fear he had created. He was no longer killing, but he had never really left the crime scene. In 2016, a breakthrough in DNA technology finally led police to Gao Chengyang. When he was arrested, he was calm. The police asked if he knew why they had come. He answered, almost casually, killing, I suppose. During interrogation, he remembered every detail of each case, 11 lives, 11 faces, and he carried them all like records in his mind. It did not sound like remorse, it sounded like inventory. On the 3rd of January 2019, Gao Chengyang was executed. He refused a final visit from his wife and sons. He offered no last words, no confession, no apology. All he left behind was only a strange drawing, a house, a tree, and a naked man. Then he walked calmly to his execution. The Baiyin case is over. But the question is, it leaves behind a knot. What does a serial killer really looks like? Why did Gao Chengyang suddenly stopped after 2002? And what did that final drawing really mean? How much darkness can a person carry inside himself while still looking completely ordinary to the world? Now, I want to hear your answers. Tell me in the comments. And if you want more in-depth true crime stories from China and across Asia, subscribe. See you next time.